Gabe Thorpe's Journal, December 4th, 2019. YouTube video posted this morning. Copyright claimed immediately. This site is afraid of me. I have seen its true face. The channels are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood, and the blood is full of hemoglobin. The accumulated filth of all their pretentiousness will foam about their waist, and all the video essayists will look down and say, "This is a cliche way to start your video," and I'll whisper, "Alright, you got me there."
Watchmen is back, baby! I mean, it's been back for a while now, actually, what with its sequel series Doomsday Clock being very slowly published the past few years, and before that we had the aptly named Before Watchmen, which was received poorly. But with the HBO show taking us down new but familiar tracks, we finally have a Watchmen sequel/adaptation/spin-off/ whatever you want to call it, that fans of the original comics say might just live up to its source material. But not everyone agrees. Some people say that the new show, despite being well written in its own right, get it? No? Doesn't really feel like Watchmen. But I disagree, and to empirically prove my wholly subjective opinion, I'm going to subject y'all to a genre analysis of Watchmen as a whole. And by as a whole, I mean the original 1985 comic, the 2009 film directed by Zack Snyder, and the current HBO series so far. Also spoilers, but I'll try to keep them roughly vague as to not ruin the mystery for you. Which reminds me! Oh my god! Look at all of these covers! Holy shit! Watchmen was written by comic legend and actual wizard Alan Moore, illustrated by Dave Gibbons, and originally published between 1986 to 1987 by DC. And just like my parents' divorce, it begins with a murder. In an alternate universe where superheroes become a real thing in the 1930s before being outlawed in the 70s, Edward Blake, aka the Comedian, a former legal costumed hero employed by the US government, is found dead under mysterious circumstances. The wanted masked vigilante Rorschach investigates the murder, slowly uncovering a mass conspiracy that implicates the remaining costumed heroes at the height of Cold War paranoia. So, off the bat, we can say Watchmen is a murder mystery. Okay, take the first half of that. You see that? You see this? What genre has a lot of this?
War films?
Yes, but no.
Horror films?
Yes, but no.
Action films?
It's noir! I'm talking about noir! And what really pushes Watchmen into noir is Rorschach, the closest thing to a protagonist we get. Rorschach is like if film noir itself was a superhero. He's a super cynical, bigoted, and brutal detective that views the world in the harshest of colors. But Rorschach also subverts noir in two interesting ways. One, much unlike every other noir protagonist ever, Rorschach hates sex. And two, his morality is black and white, refusing to ever compromise his conscience, even if it means hurting other people. Moral ambiguity is perhaps the greatest theme in Watchmen. The most despicable characters are often the most well-meaning, while the most heroic are also the most repugnant. Much more important is its deconstruction of superhero fiction. You see, Watchmen is a comic book about comic books, specifically superhero comic books, specifically Silver Age comic books. You know, black and white morality, good versus evil, holy comics authority, Batman! You know the deal. The whole point of any good deconstruction is to take a genre and confront its tropes in a way that creates new meaning. The most common, although not the only way to do this, is to apply real-world logic to it. And Watchmen does this for the superhero story. And not in the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight, what if Batman was really gritty and full of blood and third-grade philosophy and where's Rachel? But in the sense of, what if real people put on costumes and fought crime? How would it happen in the first place? What would be different about the world today in the present year of 1985? Would we live in a spacious utopia, or would it indirectly cause the end of the world, and nothing in between?
Etc.
The comic asks these questions in order to make us think about how unrealistic the stories we grew up on are. We'd like to think that if Batman really existed, it would be awesome. Watchmen says that at best, he'd be pretty pathetic, and at worst, he'd be crazy. Because you'd have to be a little bit crazy to want to fight crime dressed like an owl with the underoos over your pants. That's how you're supposed to feel about these characters. All of them have flaws to certain degrees. But again, this is about real people becoming heroes, not this ideal we've built up over, at the time, 50 years of storytelling. Watchmen is called the culmination of the comic book medium for a reason. It's commenting on everything that came before it, adding meaning to it by confronting it head on. Sounds like a lot of Sounds like a lot of bullshit to make over a comic book, right? Baby, we're just getting started. So the Watchmen film is an insanely faithful adaptation to the comic. Often, director Zack Snyder used the original comic pages as storyboards, but many people who've read the book say that the tone isn't the same, and I'd wager that it's down to how Snyder interacts with genre differently. Also, he's a stupid dumb idiot who made Man of Steel, and I hate him. For instance, the film version might be even more strongly a noir than the comic, primarily because it cuts out some of the subversive aspects, such as Rorschach's hatred for all things sexual, but also takes the color scheme of the original and makes it even more drab and dark. John Higgins's colors pop out in bright shades, often using extreme contrast in important scenes, and while the film does have its colorful moments, it usually prefers dark greens and light blues. It also doesn't share the book's strong sci-fi sense, specifically because of one of the only changes from the source material. In the book, the creation of a superpowered being named Dr. Manhattan gives the world clean, electric energy. This makes the comic book world pretty futuristic, even by today's standards. The movie, however, has Manhattan and the character Adrian Veidt working to create that energy in the present, meaning no electric cars and shit. The comic's ending also has a whole thing involving a giant squid, which is clearly a big callback to 50s sci-fi, but the film changes this to connect with its energy crisis subplot. But these are all small fries, Gabriel, and I always go for the large. There's something wrong still, but I can't put my finger on it. Oh yeah.
They're not regular people!
Even Dan and Lori, the most grounded of the heroes, have fucking Wu-Tang-style fighting maneuvers that defy the laws of physics at points. That's not inherently a bad thing. In fact, it makes the movie really fun. But by making these characters total badasses, it takes away from the superhero deconstruction. These aren't perversions, or even really subversions of heroes anymore. They're just heroes. Sure, heroes who say the fuck word, but heroes nonetheless.
I'm supposed to hate these people, goddammit, not think they're cool! My dad's cool.
Watchmen the movie isn't this grand statement on superhero fiction like the book. It's just gritty superhero fiction, and it fits right in with The Dark Knight, released the year before. I feel if Snyder was making this today, he could have had a field day with it. Sure, superhero films were pretty big back in 2009, but not nearly as established as they are today. So beyond redesigning some costumes to look more like Tim Burton's bat suits, there wasn't much deconstruction he could do. But you know what it does have?
Say the line, Bart!
Camp. Yeah! In this film, whenever a line can be read in a dramatic way, it is read in the most dramatic way. And this makes some scenes campy as hell.
Things are tough all over, Cupcake. It rains on the just and the unjust alike. The comedian has a little bit of both. And he always thought he'd get the last laugh.
Honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. So, Watchmen the book is a sci-fi murder mystery noir that deconstructs superhero fiction. Watchmen the movie is a kinda campy superhero noir. Alrighty then, what's the show? Well, it's a bit hard to say, especially since we still have 2 episodes left of the first season, but it seems like it's bringing a lot back from the comic, yet with caveats for each. The murder mystery deal aspect is back, but it's less so figuring about who done it, as much as why done it. The sci-fi part is back in droves with clones, holograms, teleporters, and cybernetic pills. But at the same time, this version of 2019 doesn't have the internet, and people are still using those pagers. Noir is thrown out the window completely. In fact, the main characters are cops, making this a police procedural. And the deconstruction of superheroes is back, baby! But this time, the topic is very different. Instead of just asking, what if real people became superheroes, it more so explores vigilantism? Whatever. Especially how it pertains to America's racist past, and connects that back to the superhero phenomena. The original comic analyzed vigilantism and politics too, but not nearly as closely as this show. Nor is the comic about race at all, really. But the switch makes sense, because the comic analyzed the big political question of its time, the Cold War. So why shouldn't this show analyze the political situation of its time, growing divisiveness between the left and right, as well as between racial groups? So Watchmen the show is an evolution from the themes and imagery of the original comic, creating something new from what came before. Each might be catered to different eras, but both ultimately ask the one question I haven't mentioned yet. Who will make sure those in power won't abuse that power? Who watches the Watchmen? But honestly, I'm just here for the tabletop RPGs.